Thanks for staying with us. So before we go into our next segment, it's important for us to take a few comments on the Facebook and Instagram. Go ahead, Mariam.
Yes, so we have Sam Olu says, yes, Nigerians are very intelligent. I traveled to the UK and I'm currently doing engineering role, which will require me to have a first degree in engineering in Nigeria. But here I am with a degree in political science, working as a project planning engineer. In fact, I funded my training personally and I follow up training on YouTube and Udemy. Or Someone Ojo says, leadership is not by force. In fact, we should only allow those who really want to serve the people to do so. Having said that, a leader should be ashamed when their children are schooling in another man's country.
Talking about that, somebody sent a message, says, I hope you see this before the end of the topic. Says that, did you see a picture over the weekend where the VC of a university in Nigeria traveled abroad for his son's graduation?
Yes.
And yes, he's a leader in the educational system. I didn't see that.
I saw the picture.
I saw the picture.
Yes, and then he explained that the child did his first degree here in Nigeria and went abroad to do his master's.
Which is standard, so you can't blame him for that. But I mean, but you see, hey,
let me just take one more message. Rolake Oluwatobi Loba. Oluwatobi says, we're all guilty of this. An average Nigerian wants to promote the goods and services of other countries rather than made in Nigeria, either cars or tourism. Definitely, it will affect all sectors because there is also a higher level of seriousness and negligence in all government parastatal, not just educational system. And no one has been held accountable because corrupt minds rule. The same way government neglects road construction because elites don't supply them, we also only revive our economy if we are willing to change our mindset and we are empathetic.
Fantastic. So this just tells us it's all of us.
Yeah.
We are all guilty of this. Okay, let's move on to our next segment. So barely weeks after the Nigeria Labour Congress warned the federal government against flouting the agreement on the electricity tariff increase, the IMF, that's International Monetary Fund, has called on the federal government to completely remove not just electricity tariffs, but also remove fuel subsidy. And joining us on the show, on this segment, is Martins Arogie, who is a partner of the Energy and Natural Resources Services for Kleinveld Piet Marwick Godela, KPMG. Yeah, in Nigeria. Goodness me, I can just say KPMG.
Yes, you should have.
Yeah. And he's currently the supervising partner for the team providing tax advisory, compliance, and regulatory services to clients in the power industry. Thank you very much for joining us. You know why I'm laughing? Last week, right,
okay, I
told our scriptwriter that please always write out the full name. Because I'm like, you just put the NPC. What does NPC? Tell me what it is. No, she's not going to write. Okay, listen, Madam Writer, it's KPMG. Nigeria. You ain't gotta say. Anyway, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so concerning this issue of taxes, you know, I mean, Nigerians, we don't want to pay taxes, we don't want to pay tariff, everything is just going crazy. Me, I have an issue with labor, it's my own personal issue with labor. But in your view, do you agree with IMF? IMF is saying remove you have to remove subsidies completely and increase the tariffs. And else is saying, don't you dare, because people can't afford it. How do we find a middle ground? What are your thoughts on this?
Okay, it's a very interesting topic and situation, if I may say so myself. The tariff issue is more like the chicken and egg situation. What comes first? I don't typically agree that Nigerians are not willing to pay the proper tariffs, because if you check what exactly is our real cost today of generating electricity, it's probably higher than what the tariffs are. Most of us have generators in our house. We buy diesel or fuel, which isn't particularly cheap. We have on speed dial the number of one generator repairman, Mosuru or Bashiru, who is constantly coming to our homes. If he's not servicing, he's changing one part and the like. So if you look at the actual cost, you will find out that at the end of the day, we're probably spending a whole lot more than what the tariff numbers say. So in a sense, I think that we can afford to pay more. But I think where people have typically struggled is what exactly am I paying more for? What's the quality of service? And what's the guarantee that if I begin to pay so much more today, I'll be able to pack up my generator and say I can wholly, reliably assume that I would have power for the majority of time. If I was running a small business, if I had a barbering salon, for example, I would want to pay more and get away with my small generator, because even the impact on the environment, we just finished COP26. So there's a whole lot that those generators do.
Go ahead, Lucy.
Yeah, so Nigerians are worried about paying more because, first of all, they do not even understand the enormity of the problems we have. And the discourse over time have said that they are not even able to, give out more than they generate. So they have a problem of distributing and a problem of generation. So they generate, but they're not able to effectively distribute. If we pay more, do you think that will help us solve that problem so that we have more power?
Obviously, because if you look at what we have today, generation capacity is about, available capacity is about 3 times what we distribute. So yeah, we can generate 3 times more than what we currently get in our homes today. So if you imagine having 3 times more power, it will give you an idea of how much reliable it will be if we're able to distribute all that we generate. And it's a question of investment in infrastructure. And you can only make that investment when you have money. And what people have argued is that the discourse should have come with money when they bought it to make that investment.
Wow.
It's a fair argument, but there's also a place where it also breaks down. How long would they have been able to do that, given that they've not been able to also recover the cost of
money spent?
Yeah, because if I go to a bank today and say, can you give me loans so that I can invest in my distribution infrastructure, what they would say to me is, show me your P&L.
Yes.
And when you then see, which is something that happened for years, where the cost at which discos were being asked to sell power to us was generally lower than the cost at which they were buying it from the generating company. Yes. It's not a viable business model. Clearly. So people say...
So that's my worry. We don't want to see abroad. Electricity anyway is expensive. You go, they tell you, please don't turn on the light during the afternoon because they're paying crazy. Turn off the gas and they're not using it because they are paying tariffs, high tariffs. But here, even though now it's West Africa, what they pay for electricity, what they pay for fuel, it's almost double what we pay in Nigeria. But why? Is it that we're spoiled or we just don't want to pay tariffs?
Again, we have to also step back a bit and see what's the background to all of this. We've never really paid for power. It's always been very, very highly subsidized. So there has to be a mindset change. When we privatized the sector, one thing everybody was very conscious of was that you couldn't just move Nigerians from the place where they barely paid for tariff to a place where it was then cost reflective. You had to come through.
Stages.
A stage. Yeah. So it was when we introduced the multi-year tariff order, we had a 15-year plan at that time to get to cost-reflective tariffs. So there will be several minor and major reviews, so we can slowly get there.
Yeah.
Then during that time, discos were supposed to make also steady investment in the quality of infrastructure. So by the time you get to that point where we are saying pay cost-reflective tariff, I can also see the impact of all that investment.
Labour will not carry flag. Let me go on a break. Come back and come talk with Miriam. Stay with us. You want to do that small incremental one. Labour will carry placard. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.
Okay, continue with this conversation. Yes, Sokwe had a question.
Yes, so I was going to ask you, we've heard the story over and over again. This conversation is not new. Like since the moment they created discos and dencos, the story has been that until we have cost reflective, we will not have good power supply. And you've analyzed the chicken and egg. But one of the issues I've always heard when we speak to people from the discos is that there's a huge loophole of many Nigerians that are not captured, that are consuming power but they're not captured. How, from your data analysis point of view, how do you best believe we can approach this in capturing everybody into the power grid and then charging cost-reflective tariff? How do you think it should be done in a way that would be attractive to investors at the same time not detrimental to us as Nigerians?
Okay, it's a difficult question. Now, collection losses have always been very, very huge. Collection losses is primarily people who consume power but just don't pay for it. So people have talked about the number of options that are available to address them. The most popular one you would hear is metering. If I meter everybody, then obviously I would be able to reduce to a considerable extent collection losses, because once you have a meter, if you don't load your meter, obviously you won't have power. But it's Nigeria we're talking about here, where people have the capacity to bypass those meters. And discos have also complained significantly that. And it's one of the reasons somewhat that they've also held back from making that particular investment. If I had very limited resources, and and I was looking to where do I deploy this money? Do I deploy it into metering? Would it reasonably impact positively my collection losses? But when you have people with the mindset that can call one man somewhere and it bypasses the meter, it doesn't help you. Right. So they talk about, okay, why don't we meter transformers rather than individual homes? So we know how much power a community receives. So it then becomes the duty of everybody in that community to ensure that they are watching out for themselves and saying who is bypassing. Because if I read your entire meters and I see that the value comes to 100 and I supply 200, therefore there is a 100 gap, I would spread that 100 across every one of you. So everybody then gets to pay for the guy who bypasses. So it then becomes your responsibility to ensure that nobody bypasses.
Madam, let me come to you.
Yeah, okay. So anytime we talk about taxes, tariffs, I just always feel that the Nigerian story is one of there's really no hope, you know. And I don't like to go away feeling that way. I want to believe that there's something that we have not yet discovered. There's something that we have not yet explored. If, you know, all things being equal, what would you say one thing that Nigerians can do when it comes to tariffs and paying their taxes and not bypassing? What is it that we can do to make sure that it's something that it will work here in Nigeria?
Nigerians?
Nigeria for Nigerians.
Okay. Now, this is a very different conversation, but it ties into two things that I'm very passionate about. One is the concept of responsible taxation, where everybody understands that they have a responsibility towards government, towards their fellow citizens, towards the community in which they live, to do the right things when it comes to taxation and when it comes to paying your fair share. And that concept for me is extremely very key. It applies not only to individuals but also to companies. Having that concept and knowing in your mind that I have this obligation to be responsible in the way I relate with my community. And then the second one, which I think is where what is probably lacking in Nigeria, is the concept of justice. People are able to get away with a lot of wrongdoing without any consequence. If you do a short poll, how many people pay taxes, you will find out the bulk of people who pay taxes are people in paid employment. And it's not because they want to. It's because
they collect it from source.
Source. So if I'd given you all your money and said, at the end of every month, just walk up to the nearest Lagos State Internal Revenue Service and pay the tax yourself, you probably will say, I will do it tomorrow.
Never do it, yeah.
Tomorrow never comes.
But we pay tithes.
But you're right. But you see, there's this huge informal sector that's not being captured in the economy, which I agree with you. But I want us to also touch on subsidy because we talked about electricity.
Yes. So the IMF is advising that we have to take out subsidy, because it's affecting our fiscal deficit, and we need to do it now. What do you think about taking out subsidy entirely? How do you think it will affect Nigerians? Is this something that we can survive? Because I know that there are some areas that they charge close to reflective tariff, at least there are some areas on the island, and the money charged there is supposed to use to cushion the effects for the poor people that are not being charged cost reflective tariffs. So do you think if we take out subsidy that the average Nigerian would be able to pay for power? Is it possible?
Okay, the way the power tariff structure has actually been designed is to allow for some sort of cross subsidy. So where some people pay higher because they probably can afford to. In our own case, industries are supposed to pay higher than us because there's supposed to be some sort of cross subsidy. So we use the excess from them to cover, even though it still doesn't. Nobody still pays cost reflective today. But when we come back to the issue of subsidy, whether it's electricity or fuel, because the IMF was primarily talking about fuel subsidy, which is estimated to reach about 3 trillion this year, according to the IMF, about 2.9 trillion. So it doesn't look like I'm exaggerating. 100 billion is significant money.
Yes, sir.
So subsidy has always been a very topical issue in Nigeria. At the point, government has said that they are taking off subsidy, but no one considered one thing, that the price of crude would also go very high. And when that went up, and compared with the challenges we had with the Naira and the exchange rate, it also then had a cascading impact on the landing price of the refined products in Naira. Nigerians, but the question people have always asked is who and what actually benefits from
the subsidy. They say it's the poor.
Yeah, but is that actually really correct?
Wow.
You know, you see, this subsidy, we are kind of exasperated. Everybody is. But you see, what I would like, you as a KPMG expert, as a tax expert in this whole thing, what would you advise we can do to remove the gridlock between the NLC and government on the issue of subsidy? Because even when Nigerians say, okay, let's close our eyes, remove the subsidy, we're not even doing it again. And say, fuel prices go to 500 naira per litre, whatever it is. Mr. Waba and his team will say, no, you dare not remove fuel subsidy. But we know that because of this small cabal, these small markets that are benefiting from this subsidy, this economy will not grow. So how do we find a middle ground where NLC understands? Because NLC is insisting that build refineries. Don't take it abroad. Here, that's the only, but that's the long-term thing. What are the immediate solutions that we can do so that both of us meet halfway?
3 months solution.
I think the first one is engagement. We need to constantly continue to engage NLC.
This topic, yeah.
There is no other way to do it other than try to explain to them what the consequences are. It is not feasible, it is no longer viable. If you take 3 trillion naira, there is a significant impact that would make on Nigeria's economy today. Our infrastructure deficit is very, very high. 3 trillion naira would make a huge impact. There are states that are struggling to pay salaries. If that 3 trillion naira cascades down to the states, it's also going to have an impact. NLC is about workers. Workers not being paid because
can't afford it.
Because states can afford it.
But the Baba cannot pay for his fuel because it's not 500 naira per litre. So how do we then?
So one of the biggest challenges that I believe we have with the subsidy is that our subsidy is not a true reflection of our consumption. And that is the corruption that we have been unable to solve. And because we cannot solve that corruption, we have decided that let's just put the cost of everybody on everybody. But the real issue that I want you to address is, am I right? Is because you have the data. I have the layman sense of I've been on this show, I've read the papers, I've listened to everybody, and from my analysis, the trillion naira that was spent on subsidy is not a true reflection of the fuel consumption of Nigerians. We are merely enriching the subsidy, the few people collecting the subsidy money, while there are cases of proven that the oil was collected, something was paid on oil and did not come into Nigeria.
Yes.
Vessel was checked and there was nothing in the vessel and we paid. So obviously we are just empowering the people and we have decided as a nation that this cabal, we cannot deal with them. They are too strong. So the best solution is we should remove the subsidy and leave them alone. But are we not still going to put Nigerians to pay this same cabal at the end of the day?
Okay, unfortunately, I can't comment on layman's
so is this money a reflection of our consumption of fuel? What we pay to our subsidy?
What I can say to you is that the money is what has been reported and it's what we've paid.
And you work with what has been reported.
So that's what's been reported. But I don't think at the end of the day we should dwell on that, because at the end, if subsidy doesn't exist in the first place, then there is nothing to fuel, there's nothing to support. So if those numbers are not correct, if the consumption numbers are not correct, if we're not paying subsidy, whether we consume 100 or we consume 1,000, it doesn't matter. Everybody will still pay for what they currently consume. Now, the issue around whether Nigerians can afford it, again, it's also something that I'm not particularly sure, because at the end of the day, how much fuel does the Baba actually consume? If we get the power sector working properly, it won't need to consume that much fuel. So it's all working in the
for example,
economy
I
at the end of the day. 3
trillion, right? And I put out that 3 trillion into power sector. Maybe I empower the discourse or whatever it is, or regenerate and whatever we're able to distribute. Then the Baba eventually would be able to pay something affordable for his he will still be paying high for electricity, but you have to pay fuel again, because we need NLC to understand this cycle. Because if we don't remove this subsidy, we're going to this affects everything, because their own worry. And NLC, let me not totally condemn them. They are fighting for that barber shop owner, because the barber shop owner cannot afford 500 naira per litre. That's their own fight. But can we therefore tell NLC that this 3 trillion we want to save, we will invest X amount into power. Now, with NSC trust, that the government indeed will invest that money into power. That's another issue of distrust. Where they put that you be promised us for X amount of years and nothing has happened.
Yeah, but that's the point. These things should not be based on whether I trust you. You can put in place a process that ensures that if we agree that these savings will be put into this particular use, what process have we put in place to ensure that we can monitor and guarantee that that's the use in which it is put into?
We're not hearing the
so it's not a word of I trust you, you trust me.
Uncle, we're not hearing this shopping. We're not in this country.
We shouldn't be discussing trust.
Shopping, there is a reflection of this matter.
Yes, now we shouldn't be discussing trust, but we have a system that people have found a way to circumvent over and over again, that when they tell us that they have put system in place, we know that the system will not work, which is why we have to now find a way to trust that the system will work. So you are saying system, of course it should be fact-based, but this is Nigeria.
You see, this topic, I really don't like talking about it. Let me tell you why, because we just go round and round.
Yeah.
Pay the subsidy. No, don't pay the subsidy because we don't trust.
No,
it's constantly the conversation that we have. All I want to know is that if we remove subsidy, what will happen? Would it work?
If we remove subsidy and then we then determine that we are able to then invest that savings in projects that then help us receive the benefits in other sectors of the economy, then yes, it would work. So it's not just about removing subsidy and then keeping the money somewhere or putting the money away.
So Nigeria will be better for it if we stop paying subsidy?
Yes.
It looks like.
It looks like. We're not sure. We need to be sure. So what about private investors? Okay. If we take away subsidy and investors understand that they are able to control the market the way they seem fit, because for you to get into business, you want profits.
Exactly.
Do you think that will also help our system?
Yes, I can say that because nobody wants to really put money in a market where you can't guarantee. If I were going to a bank today, one of the first things they will say to me is, show me your financial model. My model will be based on certain assumptions.
Yes.
One of the things I want to be able to say to the bank or to my investors is that there is a guarantee that this will not change over a period of time, whether it's 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. But if I have the mindset that whatever you are putting in front of me today, who knows what will happen in 6 months' time? They might reverse this, they might change that. So then it becomes a bit more difficult to then decide to invest in that.
Let me just ask you a general question based on data that you probably should have as a KPMG person. What's the data you can come up with on how much government is losing to policy flip-flop? If you are supposed to put a figure to it. Okay, what policy flip-flop is, let me not say policy flip-flop. Let me say change in policies. Our change in policies.
CBN
will come tomorrow and say, oh, we're stopping cryptocurrency. Tomorrow, the CBN will come again and say, okay, BDCs can do this. Okay, every new policy that, according to me, seems reactionary. What is the impact on our ability to have long-term FDI, investments coming to the country?
Unfortunately, I can't put a number to the loss, but what I can say to you is that I will think that it will be significant. Again, anybody who's looking to make an investment, one of the key things for them is certainty. I want to be able to know. And if you look at the petroleum industry and the petroleum industry bill and how long it took and the impact it had on additional investment in the sector, what people were primarily saying is, I don't care whether it is good or bad. I just want to know. I just want to know
what it is now.
So if I am confident and say this is what it is, I can then plan around that. If I then have a structure that says I can mitigate the impact of this because I know that this is what will happen over the next 5 to 10 years, and then I'm confident that yes, I can mitigate it, then I come in. If I don't think I can mitigate it and thrive in the midst of it, then I don't come in. But I just need to know. So it's very, very important to investors that there is certainty in the marketplace.
Our MTF, our medium-term framework is actually a medium-term framework that we can stand on, and then we have long-term policy that we know we can stand on. But that's not the case in Nigeria.
Do you have any messages?
Pay or not?
Honestly, it's a sad topic.
Because sometimes you just feel like we're not going forward.
Yes, it always feels like that when we talk about tax, tariff, subsidy.
Then we try.
The irony of it all is, and to be very honest, it's a function of who we are as a people, not necessarily as a government.
Lead the people.
Not necessarily as a government. It's a function of who we are as a people. Everything from tariffs, taxes, subsidy. You talked about NLC now and all of that. So people still need to understand that, and it also ties into the conversation you were having before I came on air. Sacrifice.
Yes.
There is a degree of sacrifice that is involved in nation building, and that sacrifice is not limited to only those in government. Even those of us outside of government need to also be willing to make that particular sacrifice. There is no nation that has grown without people making a degree of sacrifice.
Okay, I think we can end on that note. Thank you very much, sir. It was a pleasure having you on the show today to share your thoughts on this issue of past talks, on this unending talk of subsidy, because it's removed, they've not removed. Today is not removed. Either way, one day we'll remove the subsidy. That's all we can take on the show today. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.